Welcome everyone to Titan Avenger Gaming. We're here having another special edition podcast. I guess you could say it's the post Super Bowl podcast. Tonight's just me and Ryan. We're going to talk about mainly quarterbacks overall, and recently Tom Brady, because that's the big topic on a lot of people's minds right now. So first off, Ryan, I'm going to ask you the question. So
Okay.
just basic, simple question. To you, what makes a quarterback the best? Like, what are we looking at? Like here, and I'll give you some examples first. Some people want to go on straight statistics. Some people want to go on Super Bowl rings. Some people want victories. Like, what is your idea? Because, growing up, knowing you, knowing me, you've been very defensive minded, and, because you always could point out stuff on defense and stuff. And me, I'm mainly an offensive guy. And as much as we are diehard fans for our Broncos, our 49ers, our Razorbacks, our Vols, you and I can still look at teams on a biased opinion, on a coach's point of view, not just a fan base like a lot of people, and go, no, that was pass interference on my team. Where some people are like, every call is against them and everybody gets mad, and that's just not how it is. So what is your definition from anything that you can think of what you would say is the best quarterback? And don't get into, who you think it is yet. Just what is your opinion on what you would look for?
I could probably write a book on that, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, now you're cheating. I didn't read a book unless it's a comic
I said
book.
I could write a book on that.
Okay. I thought you said you read a book.
What makes someone the best? For starters, it would have to definitely be consistency.
Okay.
Like, it's like if they can be clutch, and when they need to be clutch, then that would definitely make. Or are we talking about just quarterbacks right now?
Yes, just quarterbacks.
Okay, yeah, someone that can be clutch when they need to be clutch, or maybe even I would even maybe even go as far as to say someone that needs to be what they need to be for the team at that particular time, like at all times. Like if you need someone that just hands the ball off, then yes, bam. If you need someone that's going to be able to roll out and toss the ball, if you need someone that's going to, I'm not saying like a one-dimensional quarterback. I'm saying someone that could definitely do everything that they need to do to get their team in the right position to win a ball game.
So let me stop you right there real quick.
That's like criteria one for me.
So but they need to do that when you're saying consistency. They need to do that over 10-year career, 15, 20-year career with Tom Brady being 70 years old. Like, like you're meaning over their career, right? Not just for a season or a game.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
You can, if you just have like one or two games here where you're that, and then every time else or every other time you're not that, then I'm not going to probably sit there and go, I've got to see consistency. I've got to see consistency game after game, or at least stretches of games after stretches of games. Like everyone's going to have a bad game. It's just going to happen.
Well, yeah.
You can't go, and if you can go and be perfect every single game, then there needs to be a whole new league for you. And
you'd be playing Madden.
Yeah, but it's got to be consistency over a season, a stretch of games in a season, over years upon years. Like I personally, I'm kind of with some people out there. Now, I think the signs point to him having a phenomenal career, but I'm with a consistent Mahomes.
Okay.
I'm with a small constituent of people that would say, that have said maybe as of right now, and I'm not saying he's bad. I'm actually saying he's great. But as of right now, what the legend they've made him into and what he is are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
He's definitely, now, that being said, he's been one of those people that hits criteria number one. He can do what he needs to do for the team over a stretch of time. But that's just that's my like first bullet point there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, until he kind of checks off everything else, I can't personally right now. Dude's only 25 years old.
Well, yeah, because let's
but
say
I
if
can't
he,
personally put him and I can't put him in a conversation with guys like Peyton Manning, with guys like Joe Montana, with guys like Tom Brady.
well, let's look at RG3, a great rookie year. Got that knee injury and tried to carry his Redskins to a victory. That knee never gave him that boost or whatever he was to be that quarterback that he was.
Yeah.
And you see where he's at, and I think about Grant Hill in the NBA. Grant Hill was a great player coming out of college, and he wanted to beat the Bulls so bad. He played on that bum ankle, come to be a worse injury than expected. That never healed right. Anthony Penny Hardaway, same situation. Like if something happened with Mahomes right now, because if like technically if he retired right now, technically, he wouldn't be Hall of Fame. He hasn't really done much,
Yeah,
but if he has this consistency, like you're talking about, then yes, Hall of Fame number one as soon as the 5 years is up, like Peyton Manning, like Charles Woodson, even though Charles Woodson's not quarterback. But if something happened, let's say this turf toe turned into some infection or something, and he has to have serious injury, or he ends up hurting his knee, or he starts getting concussions, and by 32 years old, he retires. But he didn't play enough, and the most touchdowns he threw in a season was 30, and he only got to play 12 games that year. And he never wins one, maybe goes to one Super Bowl, or even wins one more, then it's kind of like, man, I don't even know if he's Hall of Fame. He's right on that borderline. So I agree with what you're saying, because I see the same thing. Because here's my thing. When you look at like the championships and stuff, for a while people are saying that it's depending on Super Bowls. Well, okay, that's not fair. You're saying Eli Manning is better than Peyton Manning at the time. I had these conversations. He's 2-0 and Peyton is 1-1. And I'm like, is Eli really better? And people are like, well, yeah, he was able to beat Tom Brady in 16-0 or 18-0 team. I'm like, well, yeah, but that team was 10-6. And then the next year they were 9-7. His stats have never been good. He just got hot in the right moment. And if that's the case, then do we consider Trent Dilfer better than Dan Marino? Trent Dilfer, he was on the Buccaneers. Buccaneers gave up 10 points a game when they won Super Bowl. But is he better than Dan Marino? Some people say, well, Dan Marino is one of the greatest. But is he greater than John Elway? John Elway won 2. It's kind of like where do you go? Now, some people went back and said, well, Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. Well, okay, but where does that put Drew Brees? Where does that put the achievements that, this is before Mahomes, where does that put the achievements that Brady did? Brady still, towards the middle of his career, put up 50 touchdowns and all that stuff. Now, he had Randy Moss to throw to, but so I agree that it's got to be clutch because, like, if you think about sports, I'm a Lakers fan. I think Kobe at one time was the greatest in the game, but I don't think Kobe was the greatest of all time. And I don't think LeBron is the greatest. Now, when I argue that, I'm not, I try to tell those people, I'm not saying LeBron sucks. LeBron is good. But LeBron can't be guarded by anybody. He's too big for guards to guard. He's too quick for forwards to guard. Where Jordan was being guarded by Bird and Magic and Isaiah Thomas and was having to turn around and be guarded by them. So he's having to work double time in the games and still getting 30 points a game. He can make that game-winning shot. When LeBron, he's not winning. Now, the difference between LeBron and Tom Brady, he has a winning record in the championship games. Simple as that. I don't care if LeBron wins this year. He's still got a losing record uh, in the championship games, and he lost to some horrible teams. And I think his first championship was kind of given to him. There was, anyways, that's beside the point, different sport. So
I can talk about this in like basketball season.
Exactly. So going what you're saying, yeah, one dimensional. I agree. You can't be one dimensional because if you're just I think that's what's going to end up biting Lamar Jackson in the butt. If you look at any quarterback that's been like that, Colin Kaepernick, he got figured out and got shut down. His career was shortened because of his personal issues. Michael Vick, kind of one-dimensional, great strong arm, but he started getting injured, started getting concussions. He's out. And when you make, it's statistically proven, when you make Lamar Jackson hold that ball for a little bit, he's going to force it. It's kind of like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I got to throw it now. I can't run it. I'm going to chunk it. He's not making passes. Even like last night, let's talk about that for a little bit. The best throws that Mahomes threw were his incompletions.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Those should have been on the top 10 Sports Center, and those were incompletions. But the thing is, 2 of them hit people in the face. Travis Kelce dropped some big passes. Like, I honestly wish that Tom Brady would have been like, this MVP is not me. This needs to go to my defensive coordinator. Because the game plan of him not blitzing, being a blitz kind of guy, and sending 3 and 4 man rush and making Patrick Mahomes run for his life the entire game. Like, I saw the statistic.
He ran like 400 something yards.
497 yards.
Yeah.
That is the most pre-throw, pre-sack yards by any quarterback. Like, that is just beyond crazy to me. And it said that the Bucs defensive coordinator abandoned the blitz, trusted his D-line, and they got to Mahomes a record 29 pressures in the Super Bowl. Yeah. Like,
they stayed in cover 2 the whole entire game.
Yeah.
And only blitz
single coverage on Hill 0 times, which, well, duh, you got burnt for 700 yards in the first quarter last time. And Mahomes ran for 400 something. And yeah, that's pretty much about the defense. But that, like,
yeah, I would have like, if they would have given the reward to somebody else, like, I mean, you kind of knew that unless something just crazy had happened, that no matter who won that game, the MVP was going to go to a quarterback.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, the Heisman, when we're talking about, Hall of Fame stuff, Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning going in at the same time. Well, they both came out of college at the same time. Charles Woodson won the Heisman over Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning had had an average SEC championship game. And they gave it to Charles Woodson. And some people were like, well, back then it was kind of like a quarterback who wins a Heisman isn't going to have a good career. So a lot of people were like, oh, that's good. Let him go have a great career. But, it's just crazy to me. So let's dive into it because you and I were briefly talking about last night, and I don't like texting or typing a bunch of stuff when I could just chat with you. And I feel like this would be an interesting talk for people to listen to. So overall, Ron, I'm still what I'll do is I'll kind of throw some things at you. You throw some things at me. We'll just kind of go back and forth. And if we have anything we can bounce off of, we'll do that. And just like with LeBron a while ago, I'm not saying Tom Brady's not great. And I'm fixing to go into that why I do think Tom Brady is great. Okay. Now, I think back previous seasons and stuff, think about when I watched it through the 80s and then 90s and stuff like that. And it's really not me being biased because I've looked up stuff in the past, but I have to say with the short career that he had, because of some injuries early on that plagued him later on, and then getting booted for another great quarterback, I still think Joe Montana is up there with as one of the best because he had a 4-0 record in Super Bowl. I really think if he could have still played and been with the 49ers, he could have got that one last Super Bowl when Steve Young won. Like I said, but they just wanted to move on, and he got to play like 2 games over that year and a half, 2 years. And then he went to Kansas City, and being 37 years old with a old running back in Marcus Allen, and an older defense, I think, if I remember correctly, like they won some big games, went to AFC Championship game, almost went to Super Bowl. That was one thing everybody was wanting, San Francisco versus Kansas City. But he had, just throwing some things out there, he had 11 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in those 4 games. It took Brady 6 games to break that touchdown record. It took him 5 games to break the yardage record. Like when I first saw that stat, about, Tom Brady's the greatest ever because he has the most touchdowns in Super Bowls. I'm like, well, he played in 2 more. Like if LeBron James goes and scores 30 points in his first game and he's like, he's the most points ever by a rookie or ever, and they're like, well, Jordan played in 5 games and has 200 points. Like, that's not fair. It's just kind of weighed. But like talking about clutch, I think of the Super Bowl, and you saw the punter last night for Kansas City. Like, my goodness, like he looked so stinking nervous. But like, I feel like clutch is coming down to the nitty gritty. It's coming down to the postseason. But like Montana never had a game below, and they focus a lot on that quarterback rating, how they rate players and stuff. Like his last Super Bowl against a number 1 stingy Denver Bronco defense that was giving up like 10 points a game, he went off for 55 points on them, threw 5 touchdowns, and had a quarterback rating of 147.6. And perfect rating is 158. But he never had a game below 100, and he averaged 127. Brady's best quarterback rating was 125. His lowest was 71, which was back in one of those losses, and he averaged 97. But now, just talking about Super Bowls, I have to say that Brady's best wins in the Super Bowls was against the Rams, the 0-1 Rams, against the greatest show on turf, because they weren't predicted to win that game. Yeah. You have a quarterback who took over, and then you had to have Drew Bledsoe come in for an injured Brady to help get him to the Super Bowl. And then I think, even though he had a little bit of help with the last play of the game, pretty much, I think his against the number 1 defense Seahawks was a great win. Now, with that being said, and I'll stop here before we keep going on. Montana, he played the Bengals twice in Super Bowls. Both of those teams were pretty good on offense. As much as I dislike him, Chris Collinsworth, he was a good receiver. He's kind of even bitter about the Super Bowls. But Boomer Esiason, that group, Montana beat him. Beat him pretty good at one time. The other time he had to do that fourth quarter. You hear about that game all the time, him coming down there hitting John Taylor over the middle for the touchdown. You see the little instant replay on when they show like history games. But like he beat his teams by 76 points in all his games. The 4 games won by 76 points. That's almost winning by 20 points a game. And it helped winning by 45 against the Broncos. But Brady, and just his wins, I think won by 51 points. But if you include the losses in there, only won by 36. Now, besides his last 2 Super Bowls, of course, the 22-point win yesterday, which, I think
that's his biggest blowout.
It is. The only double-digit blowout is against the Rams, which was honestly another crappy Super Bowl to me. Last night, and this is a different subject, but the game was just boring. I don't know if it was the penalties. I don't know what it was. And I've seen some games, like I thought the Seahawks Broncos game when Peyton Manning had broken all those records, I thought that game was still exciting. Even though it's so lopsided, I still thought that game was exciting. But I did not, I kind of lost interest in the game towards the in the third quarter, fourth quarter. I was just kind of casually watching it. And again, commercials too, but that's a different story. But yeah, like he won by going from his first Super Bowl up, won by 3-3-3, lost by 3, lost by 4 to Eli Manning, won by 4, won by 6, lost by 8 to Nick Foles. And I think that kind of, because if you look at Nick Foles, he's kind of a system quarterback. Everywhere else he's been crap except Eagles. And then he beat Rams by 10 and beat Mahomes by 22. So with Super Bowls, I look at that, because you can't base it on anything else on any statistic, because 20 years compared to like 12, and then like right there at the end of Montana's prime, he got injured. Now, I know he can't help that, we can't hold that against Brady either, because Brady's still performing at 43, and he was definitely performing at 32, 35 years old. So.
Yeah, has he ever really been injured?
Yes, he got injured when
oh yeah.
Remember that first play of like one of the seasons, got his knee hurt and he was out, and Matt Castle took over. Castle,
I was thinking
10-5 or something. And then he was like, oh, I'm a great quarterback. And he went to Kansas City, signed a big deal, and was crap.
Yeah.
But and I have to also say, if you think about Brady, those first few Super Bowls, he had people like Deion Branch, Patton, Givens. He didn't have the Jerry Rices. He didn't have the John Taylors. I got that. And he was still able to win. Like Troy Brown, I think, was the MVP or something of that one Super Bowl, because he had caught like 13 passes from Tom Brady. But the other thing, and I've read this too, so this isn't just my opinion on this, but it's in my mind. Like, and again, this is clutch, so don't hold this against me. Like Joe Montana, I've heard this about Jordan too. Joe Montana was only behind in one Super Bowl, and he came back and delivered. The other Super Bowls, he didn't have to come from behind or let somebody else win the game for him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where Brady, the first two Super Bowls, he had to lead a drive to get them in range to kick a field goal. The Eagles game, they were actually up, and the other team, so he kind of led that. In the Rams Super Bowl, he really wasn't, that great. I still think he only threw for like 100-something yards. So, and again, playing in 10 Super Bowls, you're not going to have 10 great games, because some people don't play in 4 Super Bowls, much less 10.
Yeah.
But like I said, he hasn't had, like, he ended up having Randy Moss, Wes Welker and Edelman. They're good, but they're not like the great standout. You're not going to see them as the Tyreek Hills, the Jerry Rices, and things like that. But he had Aaron Hernandez for a little bit. But like his best guys, I think, at receiver have been Randy Moss for the last couple of years of his prime, and then Gronkowski.
Yeah, that 100%. Like that was one thing we were talking about today on I almost said First Take, but on Undisputed, was that Brady. It really wasn't until this year that Brady actually had a bunch of weapons around him.
Oh yeah, like even Scotty Miller could be like another, Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
But like,
and that was one of the things that he wanted, was to like have those weapons around him.
I wouldn't have went anywhere either, except for Tampa or someplace like that would have those weapons. But like, even running backs, he's always had running backs that could do anything, and he always had a running back committee from Deion Lewis, James White, Burkhead. He had Kevin Falk for a while, but the only time he got Corey Dillon from the Bengals, and he went off and rushed for like 1,600 yards. And that was the only time he had like a true back, that
Yeah.
was going to rush all three downs and do what he needs to do, because, having LeGarrette Blunt or Woodhead, those kind of guys, they were never, um, the all down backs, even any of the years. But like that's some things I've looked at. Another thing that gets me, Ryan, we were talking about, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this in the past. There's been too many things, and some of this is not his fault, and I don't know how much he knows about it. Some things seem fishy, but like the Spygate, the Deflategate, there's been several different scandals that he has been a part of. Now, Deflategate, they would have beaten the Colts. They rushed for like seven touchdowns and 500 yards.
They destroyed the Colts.
Like that wasn't going to matter, but it's the fact that the way he handled it, saying, "Oh, I haven't talked to the trainer," and then when whoever the investigation wants to look at his phone ends up breaking that day, and he has to get a new one. So then they pull the records. He has talked to the guy, so he's lied about it. And then when they look at the text messages, the guy's saying stuff, which it's kind of, kind of vague. You don't know what he's talking about. He's like, "Hey, Tom, I don't know what to do. They're calling me in," like you don't know what he's talking about, stuff like that. But it just seems weird. You went and said that you hadn't talked to him, then your phone breaks, and then there is messages, and then you see him videos of that guy going in. But like none of the Colts balls were deflated. 11 of the 12 Patriots were. And then the Spygate, there's rules that on film and broadcast booths and stuff, you can't have any filming, and they've filmed like the Jets because there's a big rivalry against Rex Ryan. Mike Tomlin has said that numerous times his headset quits working in New England. And then, supposedly some scouts for the Patriots, this is where the whole Spygate started, went to some closed practices for the Rams and videoed some of their plays. And it's like they knew what was coming. Peyton Manning said he could never win in Foxborough because they would be winning and they go in at halftime. And then it's like the Patriots knew exactly what plays they were running. And then Peyton Manning said that him, his wide receivers, and his coaches would have a meeting in the hallway. And then they ended up getting over that hump to beat him in New England. So they felt like the locker rooms were bugged. This is what we're going to do. Now, that kind of stuff is not proven, but the Spygate was proven. Like Robert Kraft has lost money, he's lost draft picks, and the organization has been fined. And Tom Brady even got suspended those couple games because of all their stuff. And I felt like, if this was college, they would take wins away. And I know they're not going to do that. It's different. There's different rules and it's professional. But if it wasn't for that early in his career, because when all that stuff came out, he couldn't do anything for 10 years. He couldn't even make it to a Super Bowl. And then he was getting beat by wild card teams. The New York Giants, who, again, 10-6 and 9-7, didn't win their division and could not beat them. He was 18-0 and had one of the greatest teams put together and couldn't beat the wild card team of, they were as big of favorites as the Rams were when they first played them. Yeah. And so it's things like that. Now, then again, he has still won 7. But if you take a couple of them away, he's still probably 4-3.
I'm not going to say this, obviously whatever happened, he either knew about it after the fact or he knew about it while it was happening. I could be a little bit more lenient on a guy that is in, who's in how many years he had been in when the Spygate happened?
I'm pretty sure it was the Rams, but I think
that was the Rams.
That would have been his first or second year.
So yeah, like, and I'm not gonna, I can kind of look the other way on that one. And the reason why I can look the other way on that one is because you're a first-year guy or first or second-year guy. You're about to go to the Super Bowl to play the Rams. And I'm not saying this is what happened because obviously I don't know. I was a kid when this happened. But I could definitely see, Bill Belichick or somebody within the higher ups coming to him and saying, if you want to even have a career in the NFL, you're just going to look the other way.
Yeah. Because, Tom Brady early in his career was very, very, very cocky. Where here in the last couple of years, he seems like a family man. He is kind of considerate and nice and seems like he wants to take care of the next generation, and seeing the recent things of like his family, and maybe that's what changed it. But like, he just seemed kind of like on the verge of like a LeBron where he did complain.
Yeah.
But it, like I remember Drew Brees was on Conan or something. They were asking him about the whole Deflategate, and they said, "Here, tell me what you think about this football." And he's like, "Oh, it's 2 pounds light. What about this one? This one's overfilled. What about this one? This one's about 1 pound." And he was pretty close to the right thing. And then they says, "What do you think?" And so they gave him the football with the same amount of weight taken out as the 11 footballs. And here's where I'll give Brady credit. He said, during a game, when you're trying to think about your reads and stuff, yes, you might not think about in the moment, this ball's underweight. He's like, but this is pretty good, noticeable situation. And then I even thought about this. When he threw an interception and that Colts guy caught that interception, when he gets up celebrating, the last thing I'm thinking about is the football. And that as he's getting up celebrating, the guy's kind of squeezing the ball and then he hands it to the ref. Like, hey, this ball's not right. And that's when they started checking them. And, so it's kind of like that, where Drew Brees is saying that, he didn't want to say anything about it, but he just kind of thought it was odd too that, he would notice if it was a game and, but he didn't want to put the blame on him. But it, like I said, I still think Tom Brady is good, because he did, like I said, didn't have the people, and then somebody could argue, well, Joe Montana did, so why is he great? But like he still beat some good teams to me. He shredded a Denver Broncos team, which I've read stuff, they're considered as good as the 85 Bears at times because they were not letting people get points. And he shredded them for five touchdowns like it was nobody's business,
Yeah.
But like, some people, even now, an NFL championship pre or post Super Bowl era, but Otto Graham, he went to numerous ones in a row and he won as many as Tom Brady, and no one talks about him, just like no one talks about Bill Russell. He won 11 basketball championships and everybody still forgets about him. But like Tom Brady coming back, somebody said, oh, Tom Brady coming back against the Falcons, that's established himself as GOAT. They were the 27th defense out of 32, and they gave up 25 points a game.
Yeah.
So he should have scored that many points. Now, down 28-3, and we saw it last night. And Mahomes couldn't do it, but
see, that I actually was thinking when there was people online saying this is over. I kept wanting to say, like, did y'all not see the Patriots Falcons game when that totally happened?
Yeah, and there was a tennis player who ended up having to go on a date with a kid because she made that bet.
Yeah, and it's like, well, who's on the other side of the field, right?
Exactly.
And I don't hate Matt Ryan, but
and that Patrick Mahomes, Kyle Shanahan, and that coach, they just got so conservative.
Yeah, let's
take it off cruise control. Let's even drop the speed down a little bit. And they just went totally conservative on the defensive side, and they just let them chip away. And now,
I could argue.
What happens, and you know this better than me. Now, instead of the pressure being on the other team to come back, it's on you to try to get a stop.
Yeah. I would argue that last year, the 49ers should have won that Super Bowl.
Oh, well, yeah. Like what hurt them was Jimmy G overthrowing the receiver. That was probably, I think, the nail in the coffin right there. But letting Tyreek Hill get loose on that busted play, on that deep pass, that was a big one. But they had them. They just couldn't finish. And I don't think the play calling was as conservative as what the Falcons did, because I still think they took some chances. Like they had that lead and threw a deep pass to wide open.
Yeah.
But they just missed on it, you know?
Yeah. Now, kind of back to this conversation, these are my other two reasons why I put Tom Brady. This is my reasons for putting Tom Brady at the top of the list. One of the factors is kind of just it's new, and I was thinking about it as you were saying it, and it's unfortunate. Like you're saying, you can't. It's because you can't factor this in. Like, I mean, you can't factor in what if scenarios. I wish you could, but you can't. Just because he's been able to do more because he's been healthy. So, because he's been healthy, it's like, well, you do have all these what ifs. Like, what if Joe Montana was able to, stay healthy? Because I consider him one of the greats, maybe not the GOAT itself, but when I consider him top 5 QBs, asking that same question about Peyton Manning. What if Peyton Manning had not gotten injured like he did? What if he was still kind of in where Brady's at right now with the Broncos? I think they could have definitely gone if he had decided not to retire and he was in the same situation Tom Brady was in. I think they could have repeated the next year. I really do. Their defense was just that good.
Yeah, and see,
and they,
how I am with.
They lost some people, but they were still good. It's just the problem was I think everyone stepped down the next year, but it's just they didn't have any quarterbacks. Then that's been a whole thing since then. But the other thing with me is like putting Tom Brady at the top of the list, if not at the top, and it's in the same. And I do realize that both Peyton Manning and Joe Montana, in a sense, did the same thing, but it's just a lot of the arguments were in the past. Who's the reason for this dynasty? Even though I don't really think there should have been an argument for that, I think it should have been just both of them. But who's the reason for this New England dynasty? Is it Tom Brady or is it Bill Belichick? Now, in fairness, New England has not had any players, like any star players, I feel like, for the past 5 years. But the fact that Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay, which was just atrociously bad last year and the year before that, and then takes them to the Super Bowl the very first year he's there, that's something to me. That's just –
well, yeah.
That's impressive. And I'm not the biggest Tom Brady fan.
Well, I'm not either.
But it's just so like you applaud it, and that he was able to convince these people to come and play. You brought Gronk out of retirement. You brought Antonio Brown back, and he said, he said, take a chance, and they paid off. You brought in, Leonard Fournette, who had been cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He said, take a chance on him, and then they is able to take a chance on him, and it's like amazing. And then there's a good chance that they could repeat next year.
Here's my thing with that.
Although I have arguments against that.
Wow. I think it is pretty amazing, that he goes from the system he was in, but being in the league as long as he has seen every single coverage, every single audible that's known to man out there. And I feel like him going to Tampa, he could learn playbooks and they could even modify it to help him, So I think that is something to be said. But then again, It's kind of like Bruce Arians is going to adapt to not having a Jameis Winston gunslinger that's going to throw 30 interceptions. You know,
It's
he's
just so
gonna,
bad.
yeah,
So bad.
and and then again, you have somebody that's 43 years old that looked horrible in his last couple games.
Oh yeah, he
So,
totally has.
so now he goes and he has Mike Evans. Because if you think about it, with Evans being hurt, Godwin missing a lot, Gronk not being as established, and then the running game kind of being iffy, they were 7-5 at one time. And so now with all the key pieces healthy, they go on this winning streak and they get hot. And so I think that does help him. So it might not be as him as much, but then again, what team has ever just been turned around and went on a great season when they get a running back, when they get a tight end, when they get a receiver? I can't think of any personally, but if you look at the Colts, Peyton leaves, or first off, he's injured because of his neck.
Yeah.
And I think they went like 0-13 at first before they finally won one. And he goes to the Broncos. Julius Thomas becomes the best tight end in fantasy football. Demaryius Thomas is a no name. Eric Decker. So Eric Decker says, I'm going to the Jets. Julius Thomas said, I'm going to the Jaguars, signing a big deal. Well, Julius Thomas selling cars or something now because I hadn't heard of him since.
Yeah.
And Demaryius Thomas kind of went downhill whenever Peyton left. And
he had Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas.
And him too, yes.
That's were his guys.
Yeah.
While he was there.
And so, and not that made Peyton better. Peyton made them better because obviously he went through 55 touchdowns,
Yeah.
But he went 9-13 or whatever his last touchdown interception thing, and it was the worst touchdown ratio for any winning Super Bowl quarterback or whatever that statistic was, which we all know it was that defense. Because
100%.
That's the only reason why Brock Osweiler got where he was at and think he could sign that huge deal going to the Texans for some reason.
I mean, 100%. Peyton, and that's when I said before, he was a quarterback that needed to do exactly what he needed to do, and he could do that all the time. Peyton wasn't the biggest runner, but when he needed to run, he could manage to scrape some yards out. When he needed to be clutch in his earlier days, he needed to be, he could do it. When he got to that championship, or when they got to the championship game with the Broncos, all he needed to do was manage that game, and he did so, and let the defense ride. And that's why I think that's why Peyton Manning didn't win the MVP that year. Von Miller did, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And then he retired off that, which I think is awesome. I'm kind of there's some people around me that are close to me that have said, like, if I was Brady, I would probably retire after this because, you're going out on top. And I'd hope that they can get close to it again next year and, like, he retires, because you'd hate to see him, like, turn around next year and, like, everything we're saying now is just all for naught, and they go, like, 0-12.
Oh, yeah. See, I think now, and I agree with, and I think about what who's the guy opposite of Stephen A. Smith? Max
Kellerman.
He is right to an extent that everybody kind of hits a cliff. Now, he predicted 5 years ago that Brady was going to do it. But here's the thing also. Tom Brady, LeBron James, all these athletes now have these dietitians and all these doctors who can tell them all the things to make their skin younger, make their muscles stronger. And then also Tom Brady's not getting hit, because if you go up and give him a wet willy, that's a personal foul. And but when you have, like, back in the days, Dick Butkus and all those guys, they wanted your head knocked off. And Montana was kind of in that era. Like, that's the reason why Steve Young, Troy Aikman, all of them had to retire because of concussions. And, Tom Brady, and I've seen it. I've seen, we talked about this a while back with somebody getting, personal foul when guy sacked Drew Brees and he got hurt and they called personal foul. Well, all he did was land on his side, but they're saying it has to be completely on his body, and the rules are not consistent. And You know, and I see somebody reaching up to block the ball and their hand comes down and just kind of grazes over the top of the
Yeah.
helmet, and that's a personal foul. I'm like, him slapping his helmet's not going to get a concussion. If that's the case, and when they're wanting to punch each other with a helmet, he's going to do more than that.
There was actually a play last night that I thought, it wasn't. It was one of the sacks on Mahomes, and it was he got bottled up. It wasn't a personal foul. There was one that was
Are you
personal
talking
foul,
about when
but
he
this one
was
wasn't.
all bent backwards and stuff?
No, that wasn't that one. It was one of the
that one
earlier
did get
ones. That's the one that got the personal foul. But like you could see the defensive lineman's hand kind of come in, and it didn't look like it was. I watched it a couple times. It didn't look like it was malicious, but it scraped his head. And when he got up, he was like, Mahomes was pointing to his head, and like, where's the flag for that? And I'm like, I wouldn't have called that. And then like there was one time I was like, well, maybe. Then I was like, no, I don't think I would have called that because that didn't look like it was flagrant.
Let me stop you there. What do you think about the play calling last night, or penalty call? Overall,
okay, so
before picking apart any, what do you think about overall?
I am not a Chiefs fan by any stretch of the imagination. People that listen to this, I'm a Broncos fan. Watching the Chiefs lose was awesome. I don't follow the Chiefs at all because I don't like them. I like Patrick Mahomes as a person. I like Travis Kelce as a person. Everyone else on that team can go jump off a cliff, in all honesty. Not really, but I don't care for that team. And because I don't care for that team, I don't sit around and watch that team a lot, even when they're on TV. That same goes with the Raiders and the same goes with the Chargers. I don't like any of three of those teams.
Yeah.
But so I was listening to people talk about it, especially like I really like Shannon Sharp's opinions. Whenever Shannon Sharp talks, I listen because, when he talks about football, like the actual game, the mechanics and everything that's around it on not drama and stuff on Twitter, I listen to it and everything because he's usually giving out, legitimate takes. And one of the things he says was, and I guess he had been arguing this. He said that the Chiefs have a problem with holding in the backfield, like when they're the quarterbacks. He's like, they get away with it. And, they do a good job of getting away with it, but they hold in the backfield, and it helps them. It helps them. Do I have a giant problem with that? Not really. I don't like flags as much for certain things, but at the same time, until that changes, knowing what he said after, because he's a person that's going to watch most of these games in depth, for his job and everything. But listening to what when I read what he said, and then I put two and two together, I was like, okay, I can understand why they're throwing the flags, because a lot of people are going to sit there and say, "Oh, that's Tom Brady, they're throwing the flags for that," and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree, and this is just getting into the bull, the bull crap out there. Someone said, like, I think someone on Twitter that I follow said something about, they were complaining about the flags being thrown, and the person that I was following rebutted, look, right now Patrick Mahomes is the darling of the NFL. Why wouldn't they throw flags on the other team all the time? So that didn't really bother me. Like, getting the flags thrown didn't bother me. There's maybe like one or two that I would probably argue against. Now, one that I did not argue against because I watched it, I watched it live, and I was telling my wife, because she knows very little about football. It was at the very end of the second half, in the first half, and I kept saying, I was like, and like, again, I'm not even going to sit there and say I sit around and watch Tom Brady. I'm a Broncos fan. Tom Brady's been an issue for the Broncos. So it's not like I'm sitting there going, oh, you know what? I think, I just want to sit down and watch Tom Brady play football. And I want to sit down and watch the Chiefs play football. I don't want to, if I don't have to. I will watch some of their games, but I'm not going to sit there and watch them all the time, especially if they're playing another team that I don't care for. So anyways, I'm about to lose my train of thought. Where was I?
Talking about the play at the end of the first half.
Yeah, the play at the end of the first half. So I was telling her that I was like, if I was if I was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to try to score. I'm at least going to try to get a field goal. I don't want them within.
Well, yeah, that's what they did
I
against
don't want them to have the
Green
ball.
Bay.
I don't want the Chiefs to come out and have the ball and get a touchdown, because that could spell disaster, because it's the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's that good. They have that good of players on their team. So I'm thinking, they definitely need to get within scoring range. And I think it was on Mike Evans.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the guy trip. I don't know if he tripped on purpose. I don't know if he was trying, but I watched him trip, and I watched him affect that play. And I looked at her and I said, that's a flag and that's a spot foul, and they're now within field goal range.
Yep.
And sure enough, they threw the flag, and I was like, it's going to be a spot foul. And they said, yep, it's the ball is placed at the spot of the flag. And I was like, all right, they're within field goal range. And, it's one of those things, that kind of stuff happens.
Well, here's what I thought.
So I'm not really upset about that.
I thought he caught it. Like, I was like, because I was just saying they're fixing to do the same thing. They're going to take a chance like they do with Scotty Miller against the Packers. And all of a sudden he drops back, he looks, and when he threw it to that side, I was like, is it Scotty Miller? I was like, it's fixing to be Scotty Miller. And then I realized it was Evans. And I saw him, and this is before the instant replay. And I was like, that's a flag. And it took a second. Yeah. It came out. And I looked at it, and he got his leg just enough where they got tangled up and he fell. Everybody was like, I heard it this morning. I kind of heard it, the announcers talking about it, saying it was overthrown. That ball was only really like 3 yards in front of him.
I don't think that was an overthrown ball.
No, I don't think it is either.
I think he could have caught it.
I think he would have to have dove for it.
Yeah.
But give him another couple of yards of running in a stride, then he would have to get that ball. Like, if it was going out of bounds or it was about 7 to 8 yards, yes. But I think that's what the ref did. I bet the ref looked and said, he's there. The ball landed here. He got a little time to think about it. Then he threw the flag. Now, here's the flag that I think is iffy. There was a penalty in the end zone against the Honey Badger, against Mike Evans again. The ball was, I think it even hit the wall of the stadium, of the audience and stuff. And I don't think Mike Evans could catch it, but I think it was just a missed call. It shouldn't have been pass interference. It should have been holding.
Yeah.
Because it's past the 5 yards. He's grabbing onto him. So that's the only bad call I really saw. Now, other than that,
I personally, at the beginning of the game, during the game, not the very end of the game, because I kind of want to talk about that. What you're going to get what I'm going to say. But the two personal fouls, closer to when the game was still being really played.
When they were pushing each other?
That one, and and when Honey Badger and Tom Brady were trash talking each other, and they threw it on Honey Badger. I was I wouldn't have done that. I would have or at least it would have been offsetting fouls, because Tom Brady ran up to him.
Here's what I saw from that. First off, the Jensen thing is a second man syndrome.
Yeah.
Second person is always going to get caught. So you just need to control your emotions. Your dad and I were talking about that this morning, and he was like, and Tom Brady's laughing at it. I'm like, I would be too.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's
because, some people would do that. Dennis Rodman was great at that. Now, Dennis Rodman got his own share of fines, but Dennis Rodman would get into your head and make you react with elbows and stuff. And then who's in trouble? Just like, I have students at school. They sit there and they'll end up doing something. And if I turn around, I'm like, I need you to stop throwing paper. Well, so-and-so did it first. My own kids do that. And I have to teach them about the retaliation thing. Quit retaliating. Just because someone else did doesn't mean. And that's what happened there. Here's what happened with the Tom Brady thing. Tom Brady and him were jawing at each other the entire time. But when they went up 21-3 or 21-6 or whatever, Honey Badger went up to Tom Brady and started mouthing.
Yeah.
He went up. So that's my thing. You went up as the other team scored and started jawing at him. Your team didn't score. You didn't get the interception. You went up jawing at him. What do you have to say? I hate you because you went up 21. Like, what can you get mad at him for? He went up 21-3 on you, and you're getting mad at him. So that's like, I think they let them go at it enough, a couple of plays before that. But I think that's the reason why they get it, because he went out of his way. And I think that's frustration, because you just got a penalty call in the end zone with you. But it, like I said, I thought, just still talking about the game, I thought when they got that goal line stand, I was like, all right, we're fixing to see the first 99-yard drive in the Super Bowl. Here we go. And then that was kind of a dud. And then, the kicker, he ended up fumbling that ball and kicking it 56 yards. But then there was a holding call after a great stinking tackle. Dude grabbed him by his legs as he was returning the ball. He got like 4 yards on the return. It was a great open field tackle. And then he had to re-kick it and shanks it for 26 yards or something. They were just talking about his nerves. So it's.
Well, I mean, the dude he hadn't kicked or he hadn't punted the ball, but like twice all the playoffs in the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah.
And that got me thinking, I think every one of their games was close getting there, if I'm correct. I don't think they had a.
Are you talking about in the playoffs?
Yeah, for the Chiefs. And they didn't blow out anybody, did they?
I don't think so.
I mean, they only played the Browns and the Bills, so they only played 2 games. But I don't think either one of those games
championships.
Was a blowout.
Well, they won by 14 against the Bills, won by 5 against the Browns, which we talked about that in one of our regular podcasts.
Yeah,
the Browns probably should have won.
See, if it was like a blowout thing,
yeah,
I think I would have, honestly, in my opinion, and this is hindsight 2020. If you'd blown out one of those things, probably have a couple different drives. You could probably have a couple of drives. You're like, all right, this drive is solely to punt the ball.
well, even before that, they got beat by the Chargers, which they didn't play anybody. They only beat the Falcons by 3. Then they only beat the Saints by 3. Then they only beat the Dolphins by 6. Then they only beat the Broncos by 6. Then they only beat the Buccaneers by 3, even though they were up big time against the Buccaneers at the time. Then they beat the Raiders by 4. Then they beat the Panthers by 2. Then finally, November 1st, they had won by 26. And then they beat the Broncos by 27. And then 9, they lost by 8 to the Raiders, won by 16, won by 14, won by 3, and won by 14. So their first 6 games, they won by double digits. But since then, it's all been 3 points, 4 points, 6 points, you know. Like I said, it's not, but, they did, beat the Bills, which I'm surprised about that. Beat them by 14. I felt like that game was going to be a little bit more back and forth, but
I have been saying this all year, and I feel a bit vindicated now because, no one said no, it's not possible, but I just feel like personally vindicated, and I got to see how this is going to go forward because and this is on now. It's on that offense to figure it out. But I kept saying, I was like, there is a way to shut down this offense. There's a way to shut it down. It is either, if there's a way to stop Mahomes, there's a way to stop Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. There's a way to do it. I didn't know how to do it, but I said, I know there's a way. I believe there's a way. And the Bucks figured it out. They figured it out. So there is a blueprint now to go, okay, if you really want to shut down their offense, part of it's the defensive line, but if you want to shut down their offense, it's clearly part of it's cover 2 because, they stayed in cover 2 the whole entire night. But, so I'm kind of wondering how it's going to look next year whenever they come back around, because there's the odds are right now that the Chiefs can make it back to the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's possible next year, and I say that same thing for the Buccaneers because I see the moves they're being made with a lot of these football teams, and I like them enough to say you don't need to be sleeping on this team right here. Like for instance, the Rams, but that's for a different time. This is all for a different time, and wherever Deshaun Watson lands, depending on where he lands. Like I'm just saying, I've been saying, wherever Deshaun Watson lands, Like if he lands in specific spots, you just go ahead and pencil him for a championship game of some sort because they're going. But anyways, so never shut it down. There is one thing I want to talk about, but going back to the penalties and everything, you will not at all find me at all. Like, in fact, I might have gone the opposite direction. I might have applauded it. In my body, I was like jumping up and down. I absolutely, with my being, love watching Tyreek Hill get the peace sign pointed to him. I loved it, and I that will stay in my brain for the rest of my life as a happy moment. Watching him get shut down, get the ball smacked out of his hands or smacked away from him, and then as he's coming up the field, he's looking in the face of I forgot the guy's name, but he's looking in the face of the other guy. What's that?
Winfield.
Winfield, and Winfield's got the peace sign up to him. I love that, and I'm always going to love that. And that was the most deserved flag of all time. So, I would pay his fine if I had the money to do it because, and I'm pretty sure he gets fined for that. I'm not sure. I figured he does because they usually do, but I absolutely love that flag, and I love what he did. And it's 100% because I watched Tyreek Hill backflip, I think against the Broncos. I think that play got called back, but I watched it back.
It was against Buccaneers when he had.
No, he's done it. He did it another time.
Oh, well, yeah, he's done it numerous times. But
that's the thing. I'm pretty sure it was the Broncos game, and like it got called back for something else. It wasn't anything he did, but I watched him backflip against him, and then there's so many people on social media that are like, "That's unsportsmanlike," and I was like, "Do we know who you're talking to? Do you understand who you're referring to here?" Tyreek Hill, who talks so much trash, he talks about as much trash as Honey Badger does, as Tom Brady does. So I was like, I'm okay with it, and I just wanted to make that be known. If anybody's okay with it, if anybody's like upset that happened to him, I'm not. You won't find any sympathy from me. In fact, I hope they do it to him a lot.
Well, I'm kind of torn because I want everything to be sportsmanlike, because he shouldn't have done it because the final score was going to be enough, and then his stat sheet was going to be enough to say it'd be different if he had 200 yards again. Then he can be like, okay, you peace on me, but I pretty much still outscored you, but my defense couldn't do anything.
See, that's the thing. I think he did he did that at a smart time. Like, it wasn't going to affect the game. But then again,
it's kind of like a kid at the last day of school. They could do anything they want. They're not going to be suspended the first 3 days of school the next year,
Yeah.
Kind of like the whole Ohio State team that did illegal stuff and they didn't get suspended from that Arkansas bowl game. And then they're like, well, you're going to get suspended the next game. Well, guess what? We're going to the NFL. So they had no consequences whatsoever. But
it's another story, and that's the most Arkansas thing to ever happen.
Yeah. All right. So last couple things, talking about, like I hinted on earlier, people saying, well, then, Trent Dilfer, let me see, who else? Let me think about some of these people like Kurt Warner, Trent Dilfer, even Carson Wentz, even though he didn't really win it, but Nick Foles, are they better than Dan Marino? But if you look at that, some people say we got to look at the rating because the rating figures all that stuff in. Like people with a career rating, Tom Brady is number 7 on the list with 97.3. But you have, and I'm not going to name some of the studs because when you have Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, people like that, they've had a consistent career. But you have Kirk Cousins above Tom Brady. So is Kirk Cousins better than Tom Brady? You know what I mean? Like even like if you look at Joe Montana, his career rating was 92. But then you have Phillip Rivers, who, what did he do? He hasn't done anything. Matt Ryan, he's been inconsistent to me. But then again, I think Matt Ryan's just in a bad thing, just kind of like Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford could possibly have Hall of Fame stats, but he's just like Barry Sanders and Megatron.
We're going to find out next year.
Exactly.
We are going to find out. I am so excited about that.
But
we're going to find out how good he is next year.
And I really hope he is, because
I predict it's going to be great. And I hate the fact that someone's got him on a team. I think it's you.
I do.
I think you got him on your fantasy team. You're going to keep him?
Well, yeah, probably. He's all I got. Nobody else will trade me any quarterbacks.
If I had Matthew Stafford next year and Deshaun Watson, wherever he's going to land, I'm going to a championship game.
Well, Ron, appreciate the talk. Love talking to you about sports.
This was fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
I could continue going.
Oh, well, yeah. I know we could.
I have so much. Like, I am so excited for the college and NFL seasons next year. Like, watching how some of these teams are working to try to be good now is so inspiring to me. And I look forward to sports again. I mean, I always look forward to sports, but I definitely look forward to both NFL and college. And so we definitely need to have another. I don't care if it's just me, but I mean, I hope other people can join. But I definitely want to. I want to pencil this in to talk about future predictions and the future season. Spring's right around the corner.
Like what I've been, and this is mainly for the listeners. If we can't just have our normal chats about, video games, movies, and stuff, I really want to, here in the next month, start talking about WandaVision, the Falcon and Winter Soldier, Black Widow, maybe some other movies like that.
People need to watch WandaVision. It got good.
It did, which I was intrigued by it anyways. But by episode 4, it was starting to open up. Like I knew the show wasn't going to be set in the 50s the entire time, because I knew more to it. And it's not like they have been creating the show since then. All this stuff has already been done. It's leading into the Marvel universe. Without throwing spoilers, it's showing stuff that you're probably going to see in movies.
Yep.
It's going to be a connection. It's not going to be like the Flash and Supergirl and stuff, which has no connection really to.
I don't know if this is gonna
Justice League.
I don't know if this is going to. I know only one can. I know it's going to feed into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, because Wanda's going to be a part of that movie. I don't know how big of a part. I imagine she's going to be like. I'm going to predict Elizabeth Olsen's going to be somewhere along the lines of a co-lead of that movie, but I could be wrong. But I think it's also supposed to feed into. Well, this is setting up Spider-Man.
Well, here's what I'm.
That is true. I don't know if she will play a part in Spider-Man, but I know this will feed into Spider-Man. But it's definitely feeding into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness.
Well, here's what I'm going to say, and before we end for the night, nowhere has Wanda Maximoff been called Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, that's actually a thing in the show.
I think we're fixing to see her true identity as Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, that is actually a point in the show that they have been hinting at. But it's kind of awesome.
But anyways, so for everybody again listening out there, we're doing our normal podcast. We are having, I guess you consider, one-on-ones about certain topics, with like The Last of Us, with playing that game and talking about that, because not everybody is playing that game. So that's the reason why we're having the one-on-ones, the Tom Brady conversation. Some people are not as into Tom Brady or know a lot with the statistics and stuff. So that's why I'm doing the one-on-ones with people. But I appreciate everybody listening. Like Ron said, we could probably go all night. So this is a little bit longer than our other podcasts, but I hope you stuck with us. Again, if you have any questions, if you have any topics that you want to hear us talk about, if you want to pick out and say, I need you and another person, or I need 3 people to discuss which sport's better, which NBA player is better, just whatever it is. If you have topics, please comment or please email us or me. Find me on Titan Avenger Gaming on my YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere, and let us know what you want to hear. And we will try to tackle that conversation. If you want to be a part of possibly one of our chats, let me know. You're welcome. Ron, appreciate you.
No problem.
I think that's it for tonight. Be looking forward to us having a, I guess, back to normal podcast here in the next week or two. Probably tackle some more things, probably not really sports related. Try to hit on some of the Marvel and video games and stuff. So this is us signing out. Hope you all have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, because I'm saluting you people that can't see me.
I know. I was just thinking that. See y'all.